Hello to part 2 of my series on my predictions on what the year 2040 will be like. We will be starting off in this video with the global economy. By 2040, it will be deeply shaped by AI integration and energy transformation. AI won't just assist workers, it will be embedded into nearly every role. The distinction won't be between AI jobs and non-AI jobs anymore. Every job will involve AI to some degree. The labor market will still exist, but it will look very different. Highly skilled, adaptable workers will thrive in this environment. Continuous retraining will be a normal part of adult life. If you think your time in school or a trade training center was over, think again. I think many people will be disappointed by that prospect. It won't be out of the ordinary for people to return to trade school or college 2 or 3 times throughout their career. Of course, this will require the government to step in and make that possible. If you can't make it into any of these places in the first place because you just didn't try hard enough in school, you will be put in a very disadvantageous career position. I think the unemployment rate in 2040 is going to be 20%. Despite reskilling and human labor programs sponsored by the government, unemployment will still rise as automation seeps into every aspect of work. Some form of income support systems, whether expanded tax credits, wage subsidies, or partial basic income, will likely exist in multiple countries as a response to automation pressures. I think in the United States, UBI will be present at the state level in multiple regions. Several states will pass various UBI programs. I think Massachusetts and California will be the first to pass legislation in the late 2030s, and their programs will probably be the most generous. Then UBI will gradually spread across the rest of the country during the 2040s. And I suspect the South, Mountain West, and Midwest will be the last to adopt UBI legislation before it becomes law at the federal level. Which countries decide to tackle job losses with UBI will be based on where they are located and how advanced they were technologically before and, during the AI revolution. Canada, the EU, East Asia, parts of the Middle East and Latin America, and Australia will have implemented some sort of UBI program. Africa, India, parts of Latin America, specifically like Venezuela, Colombia, as well as some Asian countries will struggle with high unemployment while implementing AI technology. Energy will be one of the biggest economic transformations. Countries that successfully modernize their grids in the 2030s will have a major advantage. Nuclear, renewables, and advanced storage systems will dominate new energy investments. It will not be enough to simply invest in the AI technology itself, for it will mean little if you have the most powerful, sophisticated data centers, but don't have the power to accommodate such systems. Successful countries will build their infrastructure around the needs of AI and data centers. Data centers and AI infrastructure will consume enormous amounts of power, making energy strategy a central economic and political issue. Globalization won't disappear, but it will evolve. Supply chains will be more regionalized for security reasons, while digital services will remain globally interconnected. By 2040, AI will feel less like a tool and more like an invisible layer of reality and a part of our daily lives. Systems will be deeply integrated into daily life, from work to education to personal decision-making. AI assistants will be persistent, context-aware, and highly personalized. Let's go ahead and touch on the topic of what education will be like for our children in the future. Education will be almost entirely restructured around AI collaboration. K-12 education as well as post-secondary education will have 4-day work weeks. Traditional lectures will be rare. Students will learn through adaptive systems tailored to their pace and abilities. Students will be introduced to their own individual personal AI teaching assistant beginning in the 3rd grade. They will be graded on how well they collaborate and adapt to their partnership with their AI assistant throughout their education journey. In the late 2020s and early 2030s, there will be much pushback and opposition in local school boards, and governments may even step in to limit the amount of tech being introduced into the school. However, by 2040, I think the education system will undergo a radical change driven by politics, budgetary struggles, and technology. While in 2030, I predict that several school districts in dozens of states around the country will be transforming how their schools operate, I think by 2040, the traditional school system will be in the minority in the U.S. as the majority of states and school districts adopt an updated curriculum. What other changes do I see coming to education in 2040? There will be fewer community colleges serving our rural communities in the U.S. Driven by population trends, declining enrollment sparked by couples choosing to have less kids since 2008, increasing costs to operate a campus, an inability to invest in AI adoption and losing out to larger institutions, and potential students instead choosing other career paths due to AI job loss fears and anxiety over student loans. Meanwhile, larger institutions will survive due to being able to adapt to the new education environment easier. 3rd through 12th grade will feature largely virtual learning. Budget constraints will have forced most of the country to limit activity at physical school campuses. I think this will be the reason public schools adopt virtual learning. They will adopt it simply because they don't have the money to operate schools and not because of how appealing the technology is. Diesel costs too much to operate the buses, it costs too much to heat the facilities, labor costs are increasing, etc. There will be sanctioned in-person learning days for learning that requires a physical presence, such as performing experiments for chemistry class. Perhaps whether a student is allowed virtual learning or has to attend classes physically will be determined by their grades. If you're a D or F student, you are put on academic probation and have to attend physical classes until you improve your grades and GPA. Whether you like it or not, I think education in the US is going to the way of the voucher system. You don't like the public school online virtual learning system? You can then choose to enroll your child into another online virtual learning school that you believe is best for your child. Some of the services provided may not even be in the same district. Some lectures and lessons may be provided by educators from other states, and perhaps maybe even other countries. Education will have more choice and be more democratized. However, technology will be more present than ever, leading to even more social isolation among the youth. I think the personal shopping experience is going to radically change. Companies are going to prioritize consumer experience. We will see an explosion in online shopping. Grocery stores will be off limits to the public and operate more like Amazon fulfillment centers, much like how online pickup works today. Stores will receive customer orders, then the store will prepare those orders. The consumer arrives at the site to pick up the order, or a company with a centralized delivery service will deliver the groceries to the customer's house. In big cities, most big box stores will operate like this, with perhaps 1 or 2 in-person stores still available to consumers who want to shop in person. Why do I expect such a shift in consumer shopping habits? The pandemic in 2020 was an introductory era for these services. People in stores alike were still getting familiar with how online pickup operated. In 2 decades' time, in 2040, consumers and stores will have adapted to the challenges posed by these services and will have learned to move on and embrace them. Stores will offer a more streamlined service that will be more convenient than shopping oneself. Also, consumers will be too preoccupied with working, whoever is still working and not replaced with AI, to spend time shopping. Younger shoppers will have grown up to be digital shopping natives. Online pickup will seem more natural to them than shopping at a local grocery store. In 2040, shopping will be planned around what time groceries will be delivered, not when you decide to shop at the physical brick-and-mortar store. AI technology will change daily life globally. The biggest debates won't be about capability anymore. They'll be about control, governance, and dependence. Robotics will be far more visible by 2040. Warehouses, logistics, manufacturing, fast food, transportation, and parts of retail and service industries will rely heavily on robotic systems. Not necessarily humanoid robots everywhere, but specialized machines designed for specific tasks. Human labor will still exist, but many physical and repetitive roles will be automated. The shift towards automation will begin in the late 2020s and start to wind down by the mid-2030s. I make this point because I don't think we will feel the major political ramifications until the 2030s. The conversations around human labor will face a reckoning. New technologies usually are adopted by the majority of consumers after 10 to 15 years. Robotics will spend much of the 2030s completing this cycle. Autonomous transportation will be widespread in major cities. However, consumers will still be prohibited from purchasing self-driving vehicles themselves. Fleet-based mobility systems will dominate urban transportation. Owning a personal car in dense cities may become less common, replaced by subscription-based autonomous services. Public buses will be self-driving. Every city over 50,000 in the U.S. will have a widely available self-driving taxi service. While Uber was competing and winning against taxi drivers in the 2010s, Uber and other rideshare services will find themselves in the taxi driver's position during the 2030s. Speaking of cities, most public service vehicles will be self-driving. Local universities will provide autonomous bus services to students, while you may remain in control of your personal vehicle. Public and commercial transit will be automated. Long-haul trucking will be largely automated, dramatically changing logistics and supply chains. Most trucking industry experts predict 50 to 90% of jobs will be erased. I think by 2040, that number will be on the higher end, closer to 90%, especially if you are a long-haul truck driver with a specific route, or if you're a truck driver who is doing a repetitive task, such as trash collection. However, I think if you are a driver that has to do a lot of tasks alongside driving, you might be safe. For example, concrete truck drivers have to coordinate with the concrete crew to determine where to dump. They have to prepare the truck for service, preparing the chute, cleaning after use, and when to coordinate with the crew to stop dumping concrete. I think a job like that is safe. However, many CDL holders may be disappointed in the next decade at the bleak job prospects. Drone delivery will be fully normalized in urban and suburban environments. It will just be a matter of what makes more economic sense: delivery by drone or delivery van. Airspace management systems will be far more advanced to handle the volume of autonomous aerial activity. Every city will have an FAA-sanctioned air traffic tower to control the flight paths between manned and unmanned aircraft. A growing number of cities will offer flying car services to its residents, either offering short-distance flights to neighboring towns or short-duration flights around the city. Initially in the experimental and introductory phase in the 2020s, available in only a few select cities globally, such as LA, Shanghai, and Dubai. However, they will be gradually introduced across the US as states pass laws regulating and allowing these aerial vehicles. They will be another transportation option for Americans. Let's use Tucson and Phoenix as an example. Less daunting than a plane or helicopter ride, not as headache-inducing as an Amtrak ride, aerial vehicles will offer passengers a chance to avoid the congestion and hazards posed by taking the I-10 interstate. Their cost will probably be between that of a plane ticket and a rideshare vehicle. They also have the advantage of vertical takeoffs, which means they won't need the same infrastructure like a runway for a plane. Every town will have a large drone aerial vehicle helipad available. I think the commercial supersonic air travel industry will bloom in the 2030s. This industry has its origins in the Concorde program. The US ended the Concorde program in 2003 after the plane was underperforming and one of the Concorde aircraft crashed. This was the first supersonic jet travel service offered to the public. Although it operated for many decades, it had several flaws, including cost and safety issues. However, in the 2020s, United Airlines and several other companies are looking to bring this option back. They plan several test flights for their supersonic jet planes sometime in the late 2020s. I think if those flights are successful, you will see American coastal cities offer supersonic flight options first, and then slowly these aircraft will work their way into airports further within the country. You will be offered the supersonic option with traditional commercial airliner option. Except in exchange for quicker arrival times, you will have to pay a higher rate for supersonic air travel as opposed to traditional air travel. The airlines will have to contend with several issues, such as scaling the aircraft up to demand. Customers may be dismayed upon learning that flights will initially be limited and tickets may go quickly. One of the main issues was dealing with the noise. If you happen to live near an airbase, you may understand what I mean. That's why I think American cities will have their airports situated near the ocean will have an opportunity to offer this service first. China, Europe, Latin America, Australia, and the Middle East will also get in on the supersonic action. This industry remains hidden underneath the waves, so don't forget to keep an eye on this technology as we head into the 2030s. After decades of Americans demanding access to high-speed rail, the United States will invest in high-speed rail. Many routes will either be completed or under construction by 2040. They will be constructed and funded through a mix of public and private partnerships. For example, California's high-speed rail project will be completed by 2040 and offer a new travel alternative for Californians. Throughout U.S. history, Americans have been trying to find new ways to travel as quickly and conveniently as possible across this huge, vast country. And that won't change in the 2030s as Americans look for new ways to push the traveling boundaries. By 2040, a human presence on or around the moon will likely be sustained, not just exploratory. The US will make an introductory return mission in the late 2020s. China will soon follow in 2030. 2030s will see the United States complete the rest of the Artemis missions. Currently, they plan for each mission to be about 6 months, with the astronauts serving 6-month durations. The time will be spent constructing the Artemis moon base and establishing a permanent presence on the moon, similar to that of a current scientific mission in Antarctica. Commercial activities will begin on the lunar surface by the late 2030s. There may be semi-permanent lunar infrastructure used for research, industry, or strategic positioning. Commercial space activity will expand, with more countries and private companies participating in all levels of the space economy, including low Earth orbit, lunar missions, and other outer planet missions. The United States will land the first humans on Mars by 2038. NASA will spend much of the early 2030s using their lunar base as a stepping stone towards flying a manned mission to Mars. The government will collaborate with private companies to facilitate this travel through the development of more powerful, durable, and capable space transportation vehicles. The space industry will witness the rise of the Indian space industry throughout the 2030s. The Indian Space Research Organization will complete its first manned mission by 2030 and then proceed to rapidly increase the cadence of manned space launches and the duration that Indian citizens spend while in space. They will spend the 2030s constructing their own space station and also send their first robotic probe to Mars. The European Space Agency will also make big advances in the 2030s, realizing they may not be able to completely rely on the US for everything, including the military, but also the space programs as well. The European Space Agency will invest in a space launch vehicle that can allow the agency to conduct manned missions and outer space missions. They will also launch another probe to Mars and perhaps invest in more lunar research to construct their own lunar base in the 2040s. The Japanese space program will follow a similar path of development for the same concerns as Europe. Other countries to potentially keep an eye on throughout the 2030s include both countries on the Korean Peninsula, Australia, Turkey, and perhaps maybe even a country or two in Latin America. Low Earth orbit will be a much more global industry as more countries will dip their feet into the pool of the space economy. The world's brightest scientists and adventurers will continue to strive to break new records and make new discoveries throughout the 2030s and 2040s. Moving from scientific topics to religion, I think religion is going to continue to steadily become less popular over the next 15 years. The public has grown tired of politicians pursuing religious policies in many areas. Or for those of whom who are unlucky enough to live in a full-on theocracy, people are downright exhausted. People will demand a more clear distinction between church and state. Virtual ministries will increase in popularity, while smaller religious institutions will lose membership as older congregants die out and will have to close. Non-denominational churches will be more popular than ever. Despite waning faith, I don't think Judgment Day will arrive. I think Pope Leo XIV will still be in charge, even in his late 80s. If the Pope indeed passes, I think the Catholic Church will continue its practice of selecting leaders from outside Europe in order to build more global influence. Countries like Mexico, the Philippines, Australia, or an African country will be the top contenders. People will explore more uncommon religions like Buddhism. This topic maybe should have gone under my geopolitics part in the first video, but I think relations between the US and Israel and Palestine will change. Despite Americans' religious beliefs, Israeli popularity will drop while Palestinian popularity will increase. Americans have grown skeptical of international aid in general, given deteriorating conditions domestically. However, that skepticism has zeroed in on Israel specifically. Some Americans have called out the influence that Israel has on American politics. AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, has been criticized for supporting candidates despite having deep ties to the State of Israel. Israel naturally has different policy goals and a perspective on the Middle East region. The idea of perpetual conflict is relatively familiar with Israelis, with them having fought wars with their neighbors for decades. They may be more willing to fight an extended conflict. While many Americans see conflict in the Middle East as an event occurring thousands of miles away on the other side of the planet, and therefore of little concern to them, and that means they shouldn't get involved in the conflict. The internet has also exposed Israel as a boogeyman in the ongoing Israel-Palestine dispute. Before the internet, Americans mostly got information about the conflict from TV, meaning they had a limited perspective and understanding of what was happening on the ground. Americans mostly saw news stories about how Palestinian militant groups were launching attacks against Israel and Israel needed to respond. However, the internet has helped Palestinians share video of what's going on the ground, and many people around the world are not happy with Israel. For example, farmers in the West Bank have shown videos of Israeli settlers harassing innocent Palestinians. Americans will demand a reduction in military and financial assistance. in 2029, the US will officially recognize the Palestinian state. Security protections for the territory will be guaranteed by the US. The current borders will be fixed and official. Israeli settlers can stay where they have settled, but they will have to ultimately recognize the Palestinian government as their authority. I think in 2040, people will look back on the actions of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu with much negativity. Alright, that's my take on religion in the future. May God bless you all. This is the end of part 2 of my 2040 series. What predictions do you think I got right? What do you think I got wrong? And what do you think will actually happen in 2040? If you got any other ideas of other predictions of the future that I should make, feel free to share them. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a wonderful day.